Time has arrived. I'll call to order the meeting of the Harris Township Board of Supervisors for August 11. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, first item on our is the public hearing on proposed ordinance 376, technical and grammatical updates to chapter 12.
Staff recently completed an ongoing project that began following codification of the Township Code of Ordinances several years ago. Through the years, minor technical issues and grammatical punctuation inconsistencies have been compiled by staff with the intent to correct those identified with a comprehensive repeal and readoption of Chapter 12, which is the zoning ordinance. Included with the agenda was a copy of the edits included in proposed ordinance number 376 that was finalized by the board in May. The CRPC reviewed the proposed ordinance at their August 7th meeting, and a copy of their letter was included with your agenda or at your desk.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on the ordinance 376 to update chapter 12? Hearing none.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to adjourn. We're adjourned. All right. Next up is our regular agenda item. You have the minutes from the public meeting, public hearing, and the regular meeting from July 14th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, amendments, corrections, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Citizen comments. Pardon me while I check things off here. So, does anybody here want to address something that is not on the agenda? Please.
Diane Farr. I'm going to read this. It's just be easier. It's very short. Historic Bollesburg is about to undergo changes. A new building by Habitat for Humanity and a new purchase and upgrade on a pivotal lot on Main Street are occurring. Normally, this would be a welcome happening, except Harris Township does not have any design standards or guidelines. As an example, the consequence of not having design standards or guidelines for historic Bollesburg is that our 3D concrete habitat house is not going to be adapted to our historical setting. Habitat says on their website the following: "It's important to remember that Habitat for Humanity's home designs are adapted to the local setting, including the available materials and cultural preferences. Therefore, a concrete home in one region may look different from a concrete home in another." This means that the Bellefonte Habitat House, according to the foreman, Larry, had to meet all the guidelines and standards in Bellefonte that our historic Habitat House does not have to meet. Historic Bollesburg is going to be a plain concrete house that does not adapt to the historic character of the village. My question to the Board of Supervisors is how to move forward the establishment of design standards and guidelines. Other citizens have made this request to no avail. Additionally, the old chestnut that Boalsburg citizens in the 1980s did not want regulations, that may have been true when our houses were in the $20,000 to $30,000 range on Academy Street, but wanting regulations now to ensure what is changed or built in historic Boalsburg is compatible with the historic character has become critically important. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Okay, thank you. Yes.
Question to, Todd, Mark. When a building permit was requested for the Habitat home, did you get a mock-up of what exactly a building block house is going to look like?
First of all, could you identify yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dottie Yukish, Boalsburg Village Conservancy.
Yeah, and to answer your question, we do not require a sort of a schematic of the construction, what it looks like, because our zoning ordinance isn't concerned with that. We need to
Okay.
see where the structures that are proposed are located on the property, the distances to the property lines. We calculate lot coverage and total impervious coverage, those types of things. So the
Okay.
appearance of the vehicle or the structure, whether it's outside the village zoning district, which this property is, or inside the village district, the appearance of it doesn't matter in our zoning ordinance.
You know, we just keep doing nothing. And by we, I mean the Conservancy, the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission. And since it's our mission as a conservancy to maintain and preserve the historic qualities of this community, it's very frustrating to our organization. Can you tell me, has the property that's for sale on Main Street, the Caparelli property, has that sold yet? Because when that sells, heaven only knows what's going to happen there. And we have no control over that. I would be willing to work with the supervisors, the Planning Commission, we all need to put our heads together and figure out what we can do. We realize we can't tie the hands of everyone who wants to build something and do something. You can go overboard on that. But to just have some sort of control over new construction. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, and so, I mean, obviously, we can't retroactively,
Oh, obviously,
yeah, no. Yeah, so the question is, moving forward, would we like to have essentially an architectural review board? And that's a constraint on people, so that's a conversation to be had. So, anybody on this topic? Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if I may. If we could do a little research and if there's something that runs in between, like nothing, and an architectural review board, is there something out there that maybe we can research to see what is out there compared to just the two? That's all I ask.
Thank you, Tracy.
I think it might be important to at least know what's out there.
Okay, thank you. So, does anybody on the board have anything they want to add to today's agenda? No? Moving on. Okay, Township Business. Americans with Disabilities Act proclamation.
Yes, so this evening we were going to have a presentation from Terry Watson. Unfortunately, he is not feeling well and was unable to make it, but he did send me a written statement that I'm going to do my best to try to read to you. It's in the first person, so I'm going to do my best to adapt it on the fly here. So Terry Watson is the Associate Director for Disability Services and the Interim Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Penn State World Campus. Many people in the community know him from his involvement as the Chair of the Community and Campus in Unity, as the founder of Strategies for Justice, or as a Vice Chair of the Center Region Human Relations Commission representing Patton Township. No matter how you may know Mr. Watson, if you do know that he is dedicated to disability inclusion, justice, and pride. As a neurodivergent individual raising a neurodivergent son, disability inclusion is vital for us and the many students, community members, and visitors who live in or visit Happy Valley. In July, we celebrated Disability Pride and acknowledged the contributions that nearly 70 million adults with disabilities make to our communities, as well as the 7.5 million students with disabilities who attend our educational institutions. He notes that he would be remiss if he did not recognize the significant loss we experienced in May with the passing of a giant in the ADA world, Patty Byrne, the beloved co-founder, executive, and artistic director of Sins Invalid. Patty was a leader in the disability justice space, and their contributions helped establish the 10 principles of disability justice. He's used these principles to provide training in Washington, Illinois, Arizona, and here in Pennsylvania, and can attest to the powerful legacy Patty Byrne has left behind. As we celebrate the 35th anniversary of the ADA and recognize Disability Pride, he encourages everyone to reflect on how we as a community can create a more accessible and inclusive world for people with disabilities. What actions can we take to foster empathy, appreciation, and inclusion for this population, which is often excluded from planning, creation, and decision-making discussions? This question has been on his mind throughout his life, and it feels particularly important this year. He concludes with a quote from Tanya Jefferson, as published in an article by Penn State News. Sharing my story and the stories of the diverse experiences of people living with a disability is how we create not just empathy, but appreciation for the necessity and importance of legislation like the ADA. And he notes, let us learn from our youth, equity is the floor, not the ceiling.
Okay, so we have a proclamation here. Proclamation celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act. Whereas on July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed into law the Americans with Disability Act to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. This legislation established a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. On July 26th, the nation celebrated the anniversary of the signing of the ADA. Whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities to reduce barriers and changing perceptions and increase full participation in community life. However, the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if we remain committed to continue our efforts to fully implement the ADA. Now, therefore, on the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act, the Harris Township Board of Supervisors celebrates and recognizes the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equity, inclusion, and recommitting our efforts to reach full ADA compliance. Any comments? Okay. All those in favor of passing this proclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. We will get that signed and out. Next up, Suicide Awareness and Prevention Proclamation.
I don't have a presentation for this, Mr. Chair, so I'd like to
Okay.
read the
Let me
proclamation.
read the proclamation. A proclamation designated the month of September 25 as Harris Township Suicide Awareness and Presentation Month, and designating September 10th, 2025 of Harris Township Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day. Whereas suicide is a public health concern, and whereas in the state of Pennsylvania, one person dies by suicide nearly every 5 hours, making it the third leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34, and the fifth leading cause of death for ages 35 to 54. Whereas over 5.4 million people in the United States have lost a loved one to suicide. Whereas each member of the community is valued and irreplaceable. Whereas talking openly about stress and psychological help builds trust, reduces barriers to care, and enables early intervention. And whereas though we recognize that there is no single cause or single solution to suicide, we know that access to support and treatment can save lives. And whereas local and state suicide prevention efforts should be developed and encouraged to the maximum extent possible. Whereas most suicides are preventable by learning the signs and symptoms and limiting access to means, we can work together to help prevent suicide. Therefore, now it be resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Harris Township proclaims September 25 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and September 10, 2025 as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day. So, comments, thoughts?
Motion to approve.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we'll get both those signed and sent out. Okay, Sunoco Fuel Canopy Minor Land Development Plan.
On June 27th of this year, staff received from Pentair Engineering Incorporated a minor land development plan proposing a canopy to cover the existing fuel pumps at the Time Saver business at 224 Bowl Avenue. The plan proposes a 24-foot by 72-foot canopy that is 14.5 feet in height. Staff has conducted 2 reviews of the plan, the second of which was included with the agenda as well as a plan copy, and has met with Pentair Engineering on site to discuss a few of the issues. I'll point out that 3 of the 4 sheets of the plan are on the wall behind you, and we also have a digital copy if we need to project it on the screen. The number of comments has been reduced to a manageable few. As the agenda is prepared, staff is working to clarify the proposed materials to be used for the canopy to ensure compliance with the outdoor lighting requirements pertaining to canopies. Additions to the site will include new landscaping on the fuel pump property and a concrete and paint striped pedestrian path along the Bowl Avenue property line, both requirements of the Village Commercial Zoning District. It should be noted that the fuel pumps are located on a separate parcel from the convenience store, so no improvements to the latter property are required. Staff's recommendation is to move to approve the Sunoco Fuel Canopy Minor Land Development Plan contingent upon satisfactory completion of review comments from the July 29, 2025 letter of the Township Engineer, the July 29, 2025 memo of the Principal Planner, and the August 5, 2025 letter of the Zoning Officer. One other thing I will add is the copy of the plan that was in your 5 agenda packets is different, slightly different than what's on the wall back there. What's on the wall is the plan that we last reviewed. Pentair only gave us 5 paper copies of the plan for the agenda, so I didn't have one to put on the wall. Okay.
Anybody out there want to comment on this particular topic? All right.
Why?
Sir, who are you?
Bud Graham, and I'm a resident, and I don't get to vote anymore, so. Well, no comments about it. I was kind of surprised that it got the variance because I understand it didn't meet all the requirements of a variance, but that's beside the point. It was issued a variance, and it'd be nice if it would have met all the requirements of getting a variance, but it didn't, but it has a variance. The only concern is we've been through this before with the canopies. The concern is lighting. We went through this before with not only site lighting, but sky lighting in the skies, and I think we have covered, as I read this, I think we've covered a lot of that. No more sheets, canopies, nothing like this. Hopefully, but we will hold them restricted to that. I have readings, light readings back before the light was there, so I know what it was before, so we can compare to that what the new lights are when it's done. I assume that they'll be held to that. So that's the only comment I have. it's kind of surprised they're gonna add another layer, another set of pumps, which kind of surprised me on that one, because the other pumps are at a half use anyhow, so I kind of interesting how this will go. So, but I just want to comment that I will be keeping an eye on it, along with Todd and everybody else, on the lighting especially. I'm glad to see the planning is good, the road is good, and I hope that this fits in with our small area plan. I hope we reviewed that, and that it fits in with our 322 corridor plan. So that's the only comment I have. So there's no reason not to forward this on, but just be aware that we're going to be keeping an eye on the lighting and anything else that goes on over there. So that's all I have.
This is accurate. Back to that lighting, looking at sheet 4, it shows the islands, but it doesn't. What kind of placement are we talking about in terms of light fixture?
The lights? My eyes aren't good enough anymore, but I think there are 6 small yellow, they're yellow on this plan, dots, and it probably shows up a little different on your plan.
Under the canopy?
Yeah.
Okay,
See
okay.
these little squares?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, those, I think, are the lights. They're inset in the canopy themselves.
Okay.
And you saw from the review letters, we did some measurements off of the information they got us, and it appears as if they are recessed. And we made a note that, you know, that's something we're going to check as it's constructed, to make sure that the sources of the light cannot be seen from off the property, and if they are able to be seen, then they'll have to be further shielded.
And as one moves away from the island to the lines you indicate, that's a dimmer light? Less light?
Yes, I mean, on this one.
Shaking his head, okay.
Yeah, the ones on this plan, which is a little bit different than what you have.
Okay.
You could see that the smallest amount of light is on this outer ring. I think it's 0.1 foot candles. I think on your plans, that's moved up, so there is no more light spilling off the
Yeah,
property
yeah.
on either side. But the most intense light will be here, and it gets to like 1.1 foot candles at the property line.
The reason for asking the question is, I saw the difference between that one going on to 322 and this one coming on to Pine Street across the Buds, but this one doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So this is the more current?
Yeah, that's the more
Okay.
current, that's the one we'll move forward with
Okay.
after the board action tonight.
Because we had some pretty intense discussion on the quick fill
Sure.
lighting. It took a long time to get it corrected.
Right?
Okay.
Well, the concern is light pollution, and we fought that for years, and I think we're doing well with it around here. We still can't see all the constellations in the sky, but we probably never will anymore. But I think if we can keep from expanding into the sky every which way, that meets the letter of the law, and I think we can do that. I hope so.
And I don't know if there's anybody else here from Pentair, but John Sepp's on the Zoom call, so.
Yeah, I do, right?
No, thank you, Phil.
And once again, we have a sidewalk that goes in the work.
Oops. What's that?
We have a sidewalk that goes in the work.
No, it does.
Well, it stops at that point. And
It starts at the edge of the property
Yeah.
there, and it will have an ADA ramp, I would assume, which is prescient, since we just talked about ADA in the beginning of the agenda. And it will go across this property, which stops there, sort of to this side of the building. It gets one of the links in, and as properties develop and redevelop along Bull Avenue, those will be connected. I don't know if you remember the Bullsburg Car Company, when they bought the bank property, they put in a sidewalk.
yeah,
As did Angelo's on the other side of the street. So slowly, these sections of sidewalk are being built, and at some point, they will connect.
it's the slow issue.
Well, progress is
Yeah.
usually slow.
I have a question about the property itself. Could you maybe go take a look at where their sign that they just put up for their pizza is? Because it is blocking the view to be able to make a right-hand turn onto Bull Avenue.
Yeah, Mark mentioned that to me. In my first review letter, I don't remember if it's in the second review letter, and I think I might have taken it out. But in my first review letter, I indicated that we have reinstituted our sign licensing program this year, and we're slowly working through all the sign licenses in the township. that's one of the properties that's going to be getting a letter about compliance with sign regulations because they currently have too many signs, so that can be worked
If you
into
could even
that.
just, I really don't care, just move it, because it's just blocking the view, proper view of oncoming traffic.
Sure.
Thank you. I mean, I do care, I think it's, but it's immediate, it's
Sure.
not.
Other comments, questions?
That's a good comment from the public.
Oh, yes, please.
Not something I can, Fred Daly from, you know where I live, 570 South Academy Street. But not something I came down, but you brought up about the sidewalks at the, where's that sidewalk lead to? I turn right there every day to go to work and I laugh. You made him put that sidewalk across his property and it's not finished. Doesn't even come to the intersection. Somebody has to stop 15 feet from the intersection. Is that in the plan to finish? I mean, does that meet the ordinance?
Which sidewalk are you talking about?
In front of the old bank.
Uh,
Eric's sidewalk comes across.
My
It leads to
recollection-
nowhere.
My recollection of that issue was that Eric tried to work with PennDOT to have it placed in PennDOT right away so that it could connect to the intersection, and PennDOT either wouldn't allow it, or the process that they would have to go through in order to do that would have been cost prohibitive, and it would have taken too much time. So Eric just decided to build it on his property.
So what Eric did just met your needs where he had to put that sidewalk
It
in.
met our ordinance requirement, yes.
Right, and it doesn't have to, that's what is disappointing, where nobody's gonna walk on that sidewalk because you can't get through the intersection.
Someday, ideally, I think it would be potential for the township to try to finish that out if there are missing links and grant funding to complete it, but
Yeah, it would be
I see
nice
your
to-
point. It's, you know, right now, but as Todd pointed it out, it met the ordinance at the time. We couldn't force it to go the whole way.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this topic? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There we go. Okay. So we're gonna move to approve the Sunoco Fuel Canopy Miners Land Development Plan. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. All right. Draft residential rental ordinance.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce the topic here. I did put together a very brief presentation as well, just to kind of go through the highlights of the ordinance for both the board as well as the public that's here in attendance. Over the last 2 months, staff has worked on preparing a draft residential rental ordinance based upon previous feedback we received. The draft ordinance provides requirements for both long-term and short-term rentals, both of which are defined in the draft regulations. Staff consulted with the township solicitor on several matters related to the draft ordinance to help ensure its enforceability. The draft ordinance includes most of the elements that were previously discussed. If you recall, back in June, you were provided with a framework for an ordinance. Most of those are included in here, as well as provisions for properties that are currently being used as a short-term rental but are not owner-occupied, updated definitions, and refined short-term rental requirements. In addition to the draft regulations, several minor amendments will also need to be prepared for the township's zoning ordinance. This includes adding short-term and long-term rentals as accessory uses in applicable districts and adding definitions for each term. I'll also note that we'd have to prepare an amendment for the board to consider to the property maintenance code to make sure it's consistent with requirements for a rental permit from the Center Region Code. So tonight, after I'm done with the presentation, our request to the board is that you provide feedback on this draft ordinance, and if you're generally satisfied with what's proposed, even including some minor amendments if you feel that's necessary, staff will finalize the zoning ordinance amendments for review by the Planning Commission. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can find my cursor, and I'm just going to walk through the ordinance here real quick. See if we can do this. Let me start the presentation. Again, I've got to find my cursor. Okay. So, as I noted, the draft ordinance provides requirements for both short and long-term rentals. It defines different rental types, owner occupancy, and other terms that are used throughout the ordinance. And both short and long-term rentals are required to have a rental permit from the township, as well as a separate rental permit from Center Region Code. The one for the township would be basically for us to know where these units exist, to have a record of how many parking spaces they have, the layout of the property, things of that nature. Whereas the permit from Center Region Code would be more focused on safety matters that they already inspect rental properties for. I will note we have yet to determine what fee we would charge for a rental permit. We're looking into some costs related to enforcing the ordinance, so that's something that would be coming to you here at a later date. As far as long-term rental units are concerned, they need to provide an application that meets the requirements of the ordinance. This includes things like proof of insurance, scaled drawing, things of that nature. They need to maintain the Center Region Code residential rental permit, again, that safety permit, that they have to have inspections done I think it's every 3 years.
3, yeah.
3 years. They need to update any information that's changed since the initial permit issuance. So for example, if their insurance were to be changed, they need to make sure they keep the township informed of meeting those requirements. And I'll also note that if they have a long-term rental permit, they can't use it for a short-term rental without a different permit being issued. They have to get a separate short-term rental permit in order to use a property for that. The short-term rental units need to provide an application as defined by the ordinance. Again, proof of insurance, scale drawing, proof of hotel tax registration, things of that nature. Property containing the short-term rental unit must be owner occupied. This is something that the board had talked about previously. That's defined as the owner's primary residence for 8 months of the year. Proof of owner occupancy needs to be provided with the application and every annual renewal. No more than 2 short-term rental units are permitted per property, understanding some properties may have an accessory dwelling unit on them as our ordinance permits. And short-term rentals may be operated in increments of 29 consecutive nights or less, and no more than 120 cumulative nights per year. I will note that that latter requirement is something that is new, that was not talked about previously with the board. That was based upon some discussions with our solicitor about enforceability. So the idea that the properties are intended to be owner occupied for 8 months of the year, this other 4-month period, the 120 cumulative nights, allows for us to enforce should someone exceed that and rent it more regularly. I'll also note that the ordinance requires a rental record be provided with permit renewal. Some of the conditions that would apply to short-term rentals would be that they need to have 1 parking space for each bedroom. Guest vehicles must be parked on the property. Occupancy would be based upon the determination of the Center Region Code Administration, except where parking is insufficient for the number of bedrooms in the home. Day guests are limited to 100% of permitted overnight guests. So if they're allowed to have 4 overnight guests based on what CRCA says, they could have 4 guests visiting them during the day, if whatever that might be for. The permit must be displayed and included in any advertisements on any listing site. And notice of rules, contact person, local contact person, etc. needs to be displayed on or adjacent to the front door, similar to what you'd find in a hotel when you are there. You normally can find emergency information and any rules. This ordinance also includes exemptions, one of which was included in the June framework, as well as a new one that has been provided in this draft. And the first one is that existing short-term rental units that are not owner-occupied can be exempt from this requirement so long as sufficient evidence is provided. This is evidence that it was used as a short-term rental, I believe it's 60 days prior to the ordinance being adopted, and that it was not owner-occupied. They need to provide evidence that it was not an owner-occupied unit to meet that exemption requirement. That exemption would cease once the property ownership is transferred. I will note that we may look at kind of clarifying what transferred means. That wouldn't necessarily be, if there was a couple owned it and one of the husband or the wife passed away or they got divorced, that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a transfer. Or if there was some estate planning going on where they they put it into a trust, and as the trustors, they still live there. That's something we'll work with our solicitor to clarify. But this exemption would cease when the property ownership is transferred. It becomes owner occupied should the owner, move into the home. It's no longer used as a short-term rental, whether that be for, turning it into a long-term rental or something like that. Or they no longer have a valid short-term rental permit. So if they did not keep up with maintaining their permit, the exemption would cease. The ordinance also includes exemptions for temporary absences. This was something that was in the previous framework. That includes things like sabbatical, military deployment, temporary work relocation, etc. So then the last thing I'll note is that the ordinance also has defines enforcement procedures for any ordinance violations and potential fines. The short-term rental license would be revoked if there are 3 offenses accumulated on a property in a calendar year. We'd also like the board to provide feedback on whether or not the board would like to hear appeals of violations. This is something that the draft ordinance is currently silent on. Some municipalities have separate rental, review boards. We don't have anything of that nature. So in a lot of cases, the board or the governing body is the appeal authority. So that is an overview of the draft ordinance. And as I noted, we are looking for feedback tonight from the board on these regulations and whether or not you'd like us to move forward with making any amendments to them before taking it to the Planning Commission.
All right, well, let me comment first that our goal here is to maintain the character of our community. As I read the ordinance, we will grandfather in anybody's existing ownership, non-occupied ownership. So we can't distinguish between whether or not you live 100 feet away or 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away. That would get us in trouble. I think one of the sticking points is going to be the number of days per year. No matter what we decide, someone is going to be unhappy, but we're going to have to make some decisions. So I'll invite the public to come up and address this. I'll ask, please, don't come up and say, I agree with everything the person before me said and I want to repeat it all. All right, let's try to keep this moving along, but definitely we want to hear from all of you. Please.
Number one, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Eric Hurwitz, and I own a property at 730 West Main Street in Wolfsburg. I typically like to speak from the heart. Thought it was important to put my thoughts in on paper. Members of the board and residents and property owners of Harris Township, I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you this evening and voice not only my concerns, but the concerns of several property owners. When I purchased my investment on Main Street, I was very careful to contact the township and verify that I could use my property as a short-term rental. I was told that the board had specifically discussed short-term rental and decided not to impose regulation. Since then, we've invested a significant amount of time, energy, and money into the home. We've sacrificed time away from other things, and we've made very difficult decisions regarding finances. We've quite literally invested our blood, sweat, and sometimes tears. It's been a wonderful thing for my family. We work on the house together. We make decisions together. We build our future. We've gotten to know our neighbors and developed relationships with people and business owners in the community whom we constantly refer to. The people who stay at our home come from all over the world. We've hosted families for high school graduations and overflow from a family's Thanksgiving in Fairfield. We've had guests for Memorial Day and volleyball camp and wrestling tournaments. Most recently, we had a family from Peru who came in to celebrate their son's wedding. It's been a blessing for these families to stay together and a real sense of pride for my family to offer them our property. Without exception, they have all been respectful and courteous guests. I think you might find it interesting that Airbnb's mission is to help create a world where you can belong anywhere and where people can live in a place instead of just traveling to it. Upon learning of Harris Township's draft short-term rental ordinance, I connected with a group of approximately 15 property owners and growing who were disappointed with the drafted ordinance. Many of us came to the initial meetings where there were varying opinions on short-term rentals. Some residents voiced concerns for their neighborhoods, the violation of some of their rights of quiet enjoyment. They were experiencing empty houses, piles of brush, cars parked all over the place. Others stood up and shared what a blessing short-term rentals were for their families, their businesses, and their community. It's allowed them to make improvements to their homes, send their kids to state college schools, and even to keep properties in their family for future generations. I believe that we were all hopeful that with an open dialogue that we would come to reasonable compromise. That's still my aim tonight. We're disappointed with the results of these discussions so far. Despite the forum of differing opinions on the matter, it appears that the board or the township has chosen to draft what we feel is one-sided solution, which intends now to send to the zoning committee to ratify. The initial concerns raised by the residents could easily be resolved by creating or simply enforcing the existing ordinances. It's clear that vacant properties are not the problem. We have a significant population of second homeowners at Snowbirds and Bollesburg. Half of Liberty Hill is vacant half of the year, and yet no one complains about these dangerous vacant houses on Beacon Circle. Parking, piles of brush, noise violations can all easily and effectively be dealt with by enforcing ordinances you already have. Instead, we'll layer regulation over regulation, impose more fees, burden the township with enforcing a solution without a problem, all to rid yourself of one bad apple. And so, myself and the group of concerned property owners have hired legal counsel to represent our interests and protect our constitutional property rights. Our attorney, Ambrose Hines of Stephen and Lee, joins us tonight virtually and has prepared a memo which will be delivered to the township supervisors. Although there are many, the principal argument is that the township does not have the authority to regulate the use of property outside of a zoning amendment. Therefore, the standalone ordinance is likely unenforceable. Understanding the regulation is imminent and not in my notes, but understandable, we present the following issues. Number one, the grandfathering of existing non-owner occupied units. The latest draft of your ordinance allows for a non-owner occupied unit to continue this use, however, prohibits upon sale, transfer to a family member, or even if we decide to own or occupy it for a while. This is a clear violation of zoning law. The legal non-conforming use is allowed to run with the land, i.e. continue until that use is either a nuisance, abandoned, or extinguished by eminent domain. Parking. Number two, it's clear through provisions like this that the township is singling out our particular use. You cannot change rules for a specific use. If you'd like to change the rules of parking in Harris Township, then you have the authority to do so for all citizens, including permanent residents, long-term rentals, visitors, commercial property owners. No street parking means no street parking. We take issue with the fact that off-street parking must be concrete or asphalt. Many properties in Harris Township have gravel driveways, including Duffy's Tavern, which is village commercial, Tussey Mountain, zoned ag, Bowl Mansion, zoned cultural. This would also prohibit any homeowner with an unpaved drive getting a new permit, which again seems unreasonably restrictive. The number of days, point 3. Attorney Hines states that a property operating as a newly defined short-term rental should be considered an existing non-conforming use that is not subject to that limitation. In addition to these concerns, the group takes formal issue with the unreasonable and discriminatory provision of requiring only short-term rental owners to obtain $500,000 in general liability insurance. The unlawful restriction of prohibiting property owners of a condo or multi-unit structure from renting their home on a short-term basis, the way that the ordinance is written. The unnecessary requirement for SEO to provide documentation that a septic system is adequate to serve the maximum number of occupants. As we all know, that is done by bedroom and not number of occupants. The way in which criminal, nuisance, and regulatory ordinances are enforced only for short-term rentals, and the inequitable discrimination of a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. I'm not an attorney, nor did I ever think I'd have to hire one. My hope, and the hope of the group I stand here to represent, many are here, is to sit down with the township and craft reasonable, equitable, and legal regulation with consideration given to all property owners. All of us can agree that Harris Township is a special place and that the residents and families that live here should be able to enjoy their properties and neighborhoods. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you.
And I'll give this to you.
Yes, please.
I would like, Mike Cabrisic, I live in Millbrook. I would like to ask the board, in an R2 or R1, are businesses permitted under the regulations? They're not, so anything that's given to the current owners is a gift. They're currently in violation of the R1 and R2 zoning. So I don't see what the problem is. They should be happy that they're getting an ordinance that allows them to do this under the law. The second thing, I mentioned, I passed something.
I passed it on to Mark, and he has information for you.
Okay, it was just a concern for a possible amendment. Some residents were concerned about the type of people that are rented, and I suggested that maybe they could be screened so that a known child abuser doesn't get a rental. But that's for a future thing, but I'm very concerned about.
It's a question you had, though, so it's a question that should be answered.
I can answer that. So there's constitutional issues with including that requirement in an ordinance like this. And anyone who's on Megan's Law that's required to register, if they're gone for more than 7 days, they have to notify, I guess, the state police or whoever their contact is. But that's what the state requires of them. And so if they fail to do that, should they be going to a hotel or a short-term rental or anything, the onus is on them. From our solicitor's point of view, we really could not include any type of requirement in our ordinance for it.
From our solicitor's point of view, are businesses such as short-term rentals legal in residential zones right now?
Well, I'm not going to speak to what our solicitor said about that in particular. I mean, they helped craft the ordinance, and they have stated that this ordinance, from their perspective, is, enforceable and
Okay.
legal. But I don't think we've ever asked them to provide any feedback on your particular question.
Okay.
Can I ask a question in reference to that? Because I think excuse me if I'm speaking for you, I think the issue is what you're saying. Is this an acceptable use right now in our township? Do we
By
have,
law.
but, because we have uses of what, it's my understanding that that was the problem, to make it a use.
We don't define short-term or long-term rental in our current zoning ordinance, nor do we permit those specifically by definition. They're not listed. That was one of the recommendations our solicitor had, was to add those as uses related to this other ordinance that we're crafting, that we drafted for you, that is going to be located outside of the zoning ordinance, but nonetheless, this would help to ensure enforceability.
Does that answer your question better?
It somewhat does. It's just,
we're
I'm
drafting-
listening to this talk about how these people who have the short-term rentals feel like they're being so put upon. But as neighbors in an R1 and R2 zone, which is a non-business zone, we're being put upon too. And legally, I think they are in violation right now, so anything they get is worthwhile, it's a benefit to them.
Just one thing. Currently, we have no regulations, which means they're not necessarily permitted, but they're not prohibited, if you want to take that as a definition. So we have no prohibitions currently, but we don't have permits either. So it just happens.
It's a new
and
kind
we
of
haven't
use.
codified it yet.
Yeah, that it's just happened.
When does the accumulation of individual short-term become a hotel? Because the short-term is basically available 365.
Can be, certainly. I think there's some.
And
that probably
hotels are
not.
excluded in R1s, correct?
That's correct.
And
We
you
don't-
cite that in here a couple of times. So we have some short-term, current short-terms that could be defined as a hotel.
I would turn to Todd as far as the definition of hotel. I'm not sure that, I don't know if it meets that definition or not. I don't know if he would know off the top of his head either. but
You know, it's never been explored in that manner within our ordinance. In researching these ordinances, there is plenty of case law in different states, I think including Pennsylvania, where it is perfectly permissible for municipalities to treat short-term rentals as the same or similar use as hotels.
A hotel.
Yeah.
But that word is in our R1 zone, isn't it, as an excluded use?
we do not permit it in the R1 zone,
That's
therefore
right.
it's prohibited.
Okay. And we currently have some operating as that?
As a hotel?
Well, the accumulation of short-term suddenly flows into the definition of hotel.
No one has come in to establish a hotel in an R1 zone through the zoning process. So these short-term rentals are just operating, but they've not actually come in and said, hey, we're a hotel in R1. They're just operating this.
And if they came in the register as a hotel, we wouldn't allow it.
Correct.
Okay. That was the point. Okay.
Okay, please.
So my name is Bonnie Goebel. I live on Homestead Lane in Springfield Commons. I have a couple of questions based on the exemptions for existing short-term rental people. But first of all, I'd like to point out that people are running businesses from the residential Harris Township all the time. People are running remote businesses from their homes. And there's a lot of businesses in Springfield Commons that people are working from home. It's no different. So it's happening. I did have a question where you said there were exemptions for existing non-owner occupied properties. Would those exemptions extend to no restrictions on how many days a property could be rented?
No, the only thing that exemption is applicable to is the owner occupancy requirement. So all other requirements of the ordinance would apply, but just the requirement to be owner occupied would not.
I guess I'm very curious as to how you came up with the 120. You said had to be owner occupied for 8 months, but if we're exempt, if we already are non-owner occupied, I'm not sure why the 120 restriction would extend to currently non-owner occupied properties. The other question I had was one thing that Eric addressed, and that was driveways. You didn't mention anything about that.
There's nothing in the ordinance specifically about driveways. It does state, though, that you need to have asphalt, concrete, pavers, or pervious pavement for whatever parking spaces are being considered for the property. So you can't have a gravel driveway or gravel parking pad that was thrown down to add additional parking. It needs to be paved.
What if that's the original, though? That's the way the house was built, just like Duffy's.
Just leave me
Well,
out of it.
the ordinance,
I appreciate that.
the ordinance specifies it needs to be, it doesn't
No.
offer that as an option. If you want to have the short-term rental, you need to have the
So
spaces
you need to
paved.
change your property, which has been short-term rental. We also moved here and checked to make sure that there were no restrictions on it. So that's a parallel situation to what Eric described. You are now saying we need to change this home that has looked beautiful since the 1940s, but we also improved it by putting $50,000 into local improvement and construction people. But we have to now do a driveway and a parking pad?
The draft ordinance specifies the parking spaces themselves. I don't know that we ever talked about the driveway. I think the concern was that we could have a situation where, let's say there's 5 bedrooms and there's only 2 parking spaces. Are you going to have a situation where you're just going to have gravel thrown down to try to meet the intent of the ordinance, but it's not going to be well kept? So the idea was to make sure that the parking spaces that are established are going to be durable and hold up to the traffic they're going to be getting as a short-term rental. That was the idea behind the draft, but I don't know your personal property situation and how much you'd have to pave. We haven't gone out and looked at all the driveways for the short-term rentals that are out there.
Okay.
But
Well,
that was
if the
intent.
existing property has a gravel driveway, as many properties here do, you are saying that would have to change.
At least at this point, the way it's worded, it says the parking spaces need to be paved. I don't think we ever talked about the driveway. I don't know that was considered. It's something that certainly could be talked about.
Because in our case, and I'm sure in many cases, the driveway is attached to the parking places.
Sure, and I've also seen where you have a gravel driveway that leads to an asphalt pad where people park. I think that's a question that can be worked out of whether or not that's important.
Clarification.
Is that a requirement for long-term rentals?
Right.
Not currently, no. That's something, again, that could be required if the board chose to.
Clarification.
Sure.
Okay, well, I read that, and I read this today, and it said, for the parking area, it said pervious. Now, to me, gravel is pervious.
Pervious
No, it's
pavement.
not.
Pervious pavement.
Gravel is not considered pervious, I hate to tell you.
Well, it's
Not.
I know, gravel is not considered pervious.
Thank
Right,
you.
Todd?
That's right.
We've had that conversation many times.
We have.
Aren't you just trying to get people to not park in the yard?
Fred, can you come up to Mike if you're going to ask a question?
I'm sorry. It seems like the way this is drawn up, you're just trying to say that you don't want people parking in somebody's yard. I mean, like they're saying, you're going to have these residents pave their driveway. I mean, I know just by what Eric said lawyer-wise, you can't just single us out and say, and I have a paved driveway, so I'm just looking out for more or less you guys not to spend the money that you're going to have to spend in attorney fees and stuff, because you can't make us Airbnb people pave their spots, but then the person beside us can have it. And they have 4 kids, and their 4 children have cars, and they park in their driveway, but they only have 3 bedrooms, but they have 4 kids. So things to consider before we go clear down this road about having to have a paved driveway. I think the whole thing is what I said. You got to eliminate this Willowbrook house that people are parking in the yards. And I just don't think that's all across the Airbnb thing. There's a few exceptions. It's not legal. It's already in the ordinance. It just needs enforced. You know, and while I'm up here, so I don't have to come back up, and I just want to say this, and I know you people from Willowbrook aren't going to like to hear it, but I'm a landscaper. You want your people in that development, whether the homeowners, whether Airbnb, whether they're long-term rental, you want them to start taking care of their properties a little bit better? Look at your entranceway. Does that actually say Willowbrook?
Why are you looking at me?
Because you're from Willowbrook,
It
and you're
says
on this
Willowbrook.
board up here,
And
and you
it says
chose to be
Willowbrook.
on the board. That's why I'm looking at you, if you want my answer. But clean up your entranceways. There's 30-year-old shrubs overgrown. You can't read the words Willowbrook anymore, and I'm a first impression person. You want your place, and that's the way with the township, you know? Things need to be cleaned up, and maybe everyone else that comes into the township will clean things up as well.
A comment about that. I don't think, at this point, we haven't addressed whether a driveway could be gravel or not. The access, the parking space itself is, the way I read it, has to be. So if you have an access, gravel access and then a paved parking space, that's one thing. But we don't want you just throwing gravel down in your front yard and saying, hey, it's a parking space now. And so that's my read on it. We'll tweak that and look at it for sure.
Well, there's an ordinance for that. You're only allowed to come back so much your place.
Well,
Yeah, but
Hey everyone, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
You can hear me?
yes.
Okay, perfect. I don't want to stay, I don't
Please
want to skip the
introduce-
line, so I
please
just wanted to
introduce
make sure I
yourself.
said something after this young man goes before me. I'd love to say something as well.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Matt Workman, 618 South Academy Street. We bought the house a few months ago. It's been our pride and joy. We bought it after a family stay, Airbnb in Montana, and it reminded us of Montana. I'm originally from State College. I was born and raised there. Went to Mount Nittany, Hauserville Elementary, State High, went to Penn State, graduated in 2006. Absolutely love Penn State and State College and Boalsburg. Had a lot of friends from Boalsburg growing up. Our vision in this home, similarly to what Eric had mentioned, when we bought this, right? We're not talking $200,000 homes. Or, these are pretty expensive homes. So we take a lot of pride in the house. We've done a lot of investing in the house. I think it's important to note, just kind of bringing up a couple points earlier that were mentioned. Number one, we have a feature on where we can actually screen the guests. So I can actually pick and choose who I want. I've turned down some, and then with a good resume, I've let other people stay there. So that kind of takes care of that point. But I just wanted to read something that briefly, I promise I won't take up a lot of time. But I wrote a short little thing that I'd love to read to you guys. And essentially what it says is short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO can bring real benefits to Harris Township and Bollesburg. They bring in visitors who spend money in our local shops. As a matter of fact, my last tenant sent me a text and said, Duffy's has the best wings she's ever had. I said, I told you so. It gets people in the local shops, the restaurants, the farmers markets, the attractions. It supports the small business. It boosts the economy year-round, not just during football season or peak seasons. Allows people to see the birthplace of Memorial Day. They are typically well maintained because we've spent a lot of money in these homes, right? There is no one that cares about this house more than me, right? I do not want someone wrecking the house. It takes away, it allows budgets, right? I have 3 kids. One of the reasons we love going on VRBOs and Airbnbs is because instead of spending all this money on 2 or 3 hotel rooms, we can stay in a house. And it's great. We're all together as a family, so it becomes more of an experience than just a roof. These quality properties attract visitors who respect the neighborhood, support local businesses. It again allows it to be more affordable for folks. It helps put Bollesburg and keep Bollesburg on the map. It supports tourism, again, to my point, not just for Penn State football weekends. They generate lodging tax, right? They generate revenue that goes right back into the community without raising taxes for our residents. With reasonable rules, in short, parking guidelines, occupancy limits, noise regulations, I 100% believe they strengthen the economy. They showcase, they give jobs to landscapers, to cleaners, to construction workers, like we've done with this house. And again, they give back way more than they take. And so I just wanted to kind of add that virtually. It's like Hair Club for Men. I'm not only a client, I'm a member. And I just wanted to share that real quick.
Thank you.
Hi, Brian Spang, live in Kaywood. I have a property right next to our house. So it's a non-owner occupied short-term rental. We keep immaculate care of it. We greet every single person that comes to that house. And I just reiterating, I'm not going to go through everything they said, but we get many, many families. Families aren't going to stay in a hotel. The families that are here for family reunions and things like that, they want to be together. And then they provide, just as this previous gentleman said, a lot of income for this region. You're really, and the 120 day limitation is unacceptable. You'll put me out of business. I mean, just put me out of business if you want to do that. As far as having this non-owner occupied Airbnb. So I just think taking the sledgehammer to this is not a wise way to go. And I've seen also from, in regards to one of the other gentlemen was talking about council and stuff like that. I've seen where in Dallas-Fort Worth area, these kind of regulations were challenged, taken to court, and they lost. You guys lost, the ones that put these regulations on lost. A lot of this stuff is, you're really kind of setting yourself up for wasting a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money. So I just urge caution to all of you as you consider this, because it's really not acceptable what's being proposed.
Thank you. Yeah, here and then there.
Thank you, Stephen Botner. I've been a Harris Township resident for over 20 years. About 15 years ago or so, we purchased a property on Main Street that we use as a long-term rental with the hopes of someday retiring into that property. We too take pride in our property. We have great tenants, always have. It, to my knowledge, has never had a paved driveway. It's been a gravel driveway since the house was built in the 50s. There's never seemed to be a problem with the gravel driveway, and I feel that if there's any regulation that requires gravel driveway to be paved, whether long-term rental, short-term rental, then you need to make any resident in the same zoning with a gravel driveway pave their driveway as well, even as a home owner occupant. It's not fair to single out short-term or long-term rentals that have gravel driveways. And the driveway is the parking area. That's one and the same. I mean, you drive onto it and you park there. So there's no real distinction between driveway and parking in my case. So I want to just be clear on, I don't agree with having to pave any sort of a gravel drive. And I also want to echo Mr. Workman's comments in terms of short-term rentals. I don't own or operate a short-term rental, but I take my family on vacation and we prefer to stay in short-term rentals. And I am the type of person that you seem to be singling out. I respect the property that I go visit. We take care of the properties that we visit. In fact, we leave them in better shape when we left than when we got there. So think about the people like me and my family, Mr. Workman and his family, that are actually getting a great experience out of a short-term rental instead of putting regulations that dampen it down and make it, less available to people like myself and my family. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Barry Slike. I live in Willowbrook on Estate Drive. One of the questions I have in how you outlined how you were handling the short-term rentals is, in the case of an LLC, right? What happens there, when you talk about if a person, they can't inherit a property? Well, I know we have 2 properties that are owned by LLCs in our neighborhood. An LLC isn't a person, right? It's an LLC is more like a company. So what happens in that instance? Do they just forever stay there as a short-term rental with nobody occupying it in a neighborhood that's zoned R1? Or does it just go on forever? So that doesn't cover that instance. The other thing is, someone brought up about, hotels. There are hotels out there buying homes for Airbnbs. If you watch the news and you see some of the hotels are doing that. Well, if you want a hotel, if that's what you want, set up an area where they can do hotels, rental hotels for homes. But we're in a neighborhood, and people that live in a neighborhood want the neighborhood to stay as a neighborhood. They want single families living there. They want kids running around playing. They want to see them, do all the things kids do. That's what a neighborhood wants. You know your neighbor, you talk to them, you have Halloween, kids run around. That's what you want in a neighborhood. I don't think you want these Airbnbs coming in and just being there forever. Like I said, we have 2 in our neighborhood that are real. They're vacant homes. We don't know who's renting them ever, if anyone. They're owned by an LLC. We also have several that, may come up for sale soon. Are they going to sell to an Airbnb? Is that what they're going to become? So is our neighborhood going to become a drive-in hotel? That's, I guess, all I want to say.
That comment, I think I talked to you once, and you don't have any LLCs actually owning properties that are not occupied.
I'd have to go back and look at the list. There might be one but I don't think it was in Willowbrook. I'd have to go back and look and see who the listed owners were.
And I certainly know an owner that owns a couple of properties that are occupied, but I don't think he's an LLC.
You can be an LLC though without a problem. Anybody can be an LLC. And all you're looking for, like we discussed this, is just a transfer of ownership of the LLC. If you want to get rid of the LLC or anything like that, any changes in the LLC, which is also registered.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, as most people here have talked about tonight, not being one, so I might not use the right terms, but talking with our solicitor about it, it was explained that if the, I'm gonna say the principals of the LLC, the people who are listed on that LLC, if they were to change, that would qualify as a transfer of ownership at that
Or
point.
dissolution or
Right,
dissolve.
so as long as it maintains itself as it is today, it would be considered to be qualifying under that non-owner occupied exemption, but if they were to, drop members and add new people to the LLC, then that would change things.
And I'm assuming upon death of an owner a member of an LLC, I'm assuming that the LLC would change anyway. The ownership would have to change by law, similar to if somebody passes, ownership must change.
Can we talk a little bit about the enforcement issue? Sort of the who, what, when, where, how kind of, it's in here in various contexts. The permit through us, the permit through Senate Region Code, and I think we don't want to get bogged down with putting a whole new enforcement system together. It can't be Todd. And how do we deal with the who, what, when, where, how enforcement of everything that's in here?
Well, I think the permit issuance part of it is probably something similar to what Todd's already doing with a lot of zoning permits and rental permits that have to come to him for a long-term rental, so.
Because it starts at his place of heat, basically.
Correct.
But those that aren't under Todd's jurisdiction, how do we handle that?
When you say not, I'm not sure I understand when you say not under his jurisdiction.
Well, there are issues, the life safety would be under Center Region Code.
Right.
The driveway issue would be under whom?
Well, Todd would enforce the aspects of this ordinance that are not under Center Region Code. So the Center Region Code permit process would be handled by Center Region Code. That's the life safety matters.
Okay.
But this ordinance's requirements would be enforced by the township offices. Most of that would be done at the time they come in for their application or their renewal, just verifying they have that information. The other thing that we would do or have to do would be to work with a third-party vendor, which other municipalities in the region do. There's, State College Borough, they restrict 120 days per year cumulative, and College Township, it's 45 calendar days cumulatively. And they utilize a company that tracks that information of when the unit is being used. My understanding, scours all these different rental platforms to collect that data. And then there's also the benefit, these companies will contact new units that are coming on. Maybe they're not aware they need to have a local permit. They'll let them know that you need to go to the township and get a permit prior to renting your property.
Yeah, that's the basis of the question, in terms of a third-party contractor.
And for the most part, enforcement, like anything we do here in the township, is going to be based on complaint. We're not going to be going out and, driving past these units all the time to make sure the grass is mowed or that they, aren't parking on the grass. We'll be responding to complaints when they come in, and that would be either Todd during the week, or if it's out of office hours on a weekend, it's possible the police could be called if there was a serious concern.
Does the Airbnb association monitor that to the point of being useful to the township? In terms of consecutive days and all that kind of stuff?
That would be, this company would monitor that, but I don't know if, you mentioned an association, I don't know if there is such a thing, there might be.
We've heard there is. People have come here and told us they're working with an Airbnb association.
I don't know if it's a local group or if that's some national.
No, the context has been in a national kind of way. I don't deal with them, so I'm not sure if there is, but does anybody deal with a national Airbnb association that does reservations or something?
Airbnb is a business that's operated internationally.
Sir, if you're If you have any more to say, please go ahead.
I don't know all the ins and outs.
No, yeah, I think, yeah, what he was reiterating, Dennis, is a lot of these platforms that these folks are working with, that's where they list their properties online. So that is who they work through to get reservations and advertise their property, and I'm sure they all get insurance and things like that through these as well. Should something bad happen in their property, they're covered from damages and
Is
things like
that data fed back to the township in terms of the accumulated nights and
That's what
all
this
that kind of?
third-party service would do for us. I think I think anyone can probably work with the companies individually to collect the data, but it's a whole lot easier to pay a third party to go ahead and aggregate that for us. And they're doing that, as I mentioned, for 2 other center region municipalities already. I think there's Todd looked into it. I think there's multiple companies that do it. So we would need to do a little, research in to see which one would work best
How much of
for.
our taxpayer dollars go to pay that third party?
Pardon?
How much of our taxpayer dollars?
None.
If you were going to,
Please.
you need to come to the mic if you're going to speak in the future and identify yourself. But I will say that in this case, it would be built into the fee. That's what other municipalities have done. They build it into their fee, so it's not affecting the taxpayers. It's related back to the service that you're getting from the township for the required permit that you have. So that's how it would work.
We have a time limit here, right?
Pardon me?
We have a time limit here.
Okay, that's fine. But Paul Rittenhouse, a resident over in the better part of the community in Windmill Road but one of the things that is rarely, if at all, gets discussed, senior citizens. How many senior citizens selling their homes because they can't afford to stay there with the taxes? My taxes, school tax, township tax, is about 1.5 of my Social Security check. Now, so there's others, and I've been okay financially, but there are senior citizens that have to move out, or if they go to a daycare center or night or whatever. But if that house sits vacant for a little bit of time, as most of you know, you're going to get mildew and bugs and whatever. So the short term for senior citizens is very difficult. Now, I have a fellow here, I don't know whether some of you know that, but he lives in Denver. He bought a house or property off of my son, 2 acres. We're over there, Misty Hill Drive, over in that area. Now, that's mostly farmland, but it's got 10-acre sites, most of them. But the problem, there's about 100 yards of gravel road going into his house. Now, he has asphalt in front of his house, but we have a parking area that is stoned for excess or overburdened on the driveway. So that 100 yards of putting asphalt in it would be expensive. I mean, but I just wanted to make the point, like for Doug Nellis, he was born and raised in Pine Grove Mills, but he moved to Denver years ago, and he bought this house and got it moving, but he couldn't move back right away. His goal is to eventually move back with his family. Now he has a job. He can't leave because of an elderly lady that's in her about 98. So he's kind of stuck there waiting for things to develop so he can come back home. But in this case, the short-term lease for him is going to be difficult because then he has another 6-7 months or whatever of no income coming in to take care of that house, to maintain it, to keep the moisture out, and so on. So I think you need to consider senior citizens and how you're going to affect them with short-term, and not all the rental properties are in developments. You know, we've got a lot of open space out there, and so you got some of these homes that are people want to rent them and help to pay their darn taxes and so on. But That's where I'm coming from, as a senior citizen. That it's, when I had to pay my school taxes of over $5,000. Now, there are some people here paying more. But, I mean, that takes a chunk out of a senior citizen. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yep, brief. Thank you.
You know, thank you again, Eric Hurwitz, 730 West Main Street. Look, like, I don't like being the bad guy. I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm pretty amicable. I think all of these comments on both sides are very valid. And I think that is my whole point. And, like, I'm sorry that it came out the way it did. However, I think there is more to discuss. And it seems like the intent is to push this through to zoning while there is still lots of discussion and lots of dissent from both sides. We need to get together. We need to have, outside of a Board of Supervisors meeting, a round table of stakeholders, and so that we can discuss this amicably and take each of these points and ferret them out and understand people's both sides and come to solutions that both sides can live with, excuse me. So I hope that happens. I hope that's the result of tonight.
Can I say something? No, I want to say something. I have been through this whole thing, and I do not know what my fellow supervisors think, because we've not sat around and talked about it. I had some clarification, 2 hours of clarification with Mark today over this. And I've had a lot of questions about the parking. I had a lot of questions about the number of cars you're allowed, because when we go somewhere, we are told how many cars are allowed, and that's what we do, okay? So I had a lot of questions about all this stuff, and I have marks and what, I have this, this and yada, yada, yada. And I guess the problem is I now feel that I'm on the defensive, and that's what you did, and you intended to do that. And so now you're asking, I get to speak now. I guess you're sitting here saying that you would like a round table, and I guess I really wish that you wouldn't have put me in this particular position, and you would have said to me, because you had texted me and asked if you could speak to me, and I was very open to that. But instead, I feel like now I'm on the defensive, and now I have to work to get off of the defensive, because now you would like to speak in a roundtable. So I think that you've put me in a little bit of a difficult position, and now I've got to get back to where I was before.
I would echo that exact same thing.
I never did anything. I was always the one who was completely neutral and questioning this and that all the way.
I do not call you out personally. I came here multiple times in front of you. I offered my opinion, as did many others. And the solution that the township, I won't say the board, but the township came up with was to hand us this piece of paper and say, this is what's happening. They didn't say, let's discuss this. They said, here it is, and you'll like it, or you'll live with it. And so to put you on the defensive, I would say, I felt very much the same way. I would love to have come and sat in a collaborative meeting to discuss
that this was the first thing, and it was never
told. Point of order. This is not appropriate.
Thank you.
This is not appropriate.
We need points, we don't need discussion.
No, we don't want it.
Well, and to the point, we're not passing an ordinance.
Thank you.
We're discussing an ordinance.
Thank you.
And we have questions that we still need to address.
Thank you.
And we will take that into consideration. We are going to have to make some decisions. And I guarantee you, some people are not going to be happy.
That is the nature of compromise.
But some will be.
Thank you.
Well,
I think
we can make everybody a little bit unhappy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would add something new to this conversation?
Good, great. Hi, Bud.
Hello.
How are you?
I didn't even notice on the agenda tonight until I got a phone call earlier on. Just a couple comments. I'm not for or against it, but you have to realize this is, first thing I worry about is when they hear about property rights. You own a piece of property, you own a home, and you have certain rights. Now, are we in danger of invading those rights or infringing upon those rights? I want to be very careful on that. If you own property, you have certain rights with that property. And we have to be careful not to invade, to infringe any of those rights at all. And I'm sure we can word something that can happen. Because when you have a piece of property, you should be able to do within reason what you want to be able to do with that property. Whether it has rental or not, a rental is rental to me. Rental is a rental, whether it's short or long term. If you rent a house, or you rent it or you rent it to it, it's still a rental. Rentals have been going in Harris Township here since 1986, so it's just nothing new. And I would venture to say that with this topic brought up, a lot of the neighbors through the hill don't even know their neighbors had short-term rentals, as we're now called them. Used to be called Penn State weekenders, or this is what it was. So it's not. I think we may be overthinking this a little bit. We need to spend some time, get everybody cooled down, get the right wording. I kind of hesitate owner-occupied because that's a little restrictive. I don't know what the answer to that would really be. We don't want corporate people coming in buying developments up. I agree, but at the same time, if it's not owner-occupied, I don't know what to say about that. I hate to see that you have to be owner-occupied because it can't be practical for everybody all the time. So we need to think about it. It's nothing new. And look at, we mentioned some city. Let's look, I don't know, you probably looked at other ordinances. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure they're out there. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We want to give an ordinance out that makes sense. And let's do that. But remember, if you have a rental permit, we have more control over that than we do a private home. Our rental permit, our rental housing is that thick, and it tells you you have to have windows in your house. Yeah, so we're very, very controlled. We can control rental houses with rental more than you control private houses. I can show you 10 rental homes. I can show you 10 private, and you would not believe the mess the private homes are in. I can show you 5 or 6 within a mile of here that are just horrendous. So let's not get excited about what it looks like or what's going to do. Let's just work on it. So that's my only comment. Well, I'm sure we get a chance to make more comments. I'm sure. Thank you.
I just have one last thing to bring up, and I don't know if you're finished up looking into it, but the state Supreme Court has ruled twice on this type of a situation, especially with R1 zoned neighborhoods. And it ruled each time with the neighborhood, okay, against having the rentals or short-term rentals or drive-in hotels, whatever you want to call them. So they've already set precedents twice. So
They ruled in favor of the municipality or the individual?
The neighborhood. They said no.
What's the ruling?
No short-term rentals.
I forget what it's called.
Slice of life case.
The slice
Yes.
of life cases.
There were 2 of them. So the state Supreme Court has ruled twice. And now there's precedence on that topic. So, just to throw that out there in case someone is planning on bringing in a suit for it.
That's why we pay a solicitor. Yep.
Honest, my last question. It will be my last question. I'm just curious. I've been thinking, where did the 190 days come from?
120 days?
Or what's the maximum?
It's 120 days cumulative. It's
Where did that? I'm just curious of.
8 months owner occupied. That's
Right, I get the
basically
months.
4 months.
Why did the 8-4 come? Where did that? Why can't somebody rent their place out 365 days a year, just like the long-term rental people do?
Well, that was something that when this was previously discussed, that was feedback that was given and talked about of what the board's goals were with the ordinance. And that was, owner occupancy was something that was discussed, I think, back in June. And it was speaking with our solicitor more about and understanding how to enforce that. It was important for us to include that to include a limit, and 120 days is what we came up with because of the 8-month requirement.
Right.
So it was just some simple math in our
I get it,
case.
I get it, but the 120 days, if it was the 365, like a long-term rental, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't have to enforce it. Nobody would have to keep track of anything, and that house would be occupied all the time. We're worried about houses sitting there vacant. So you're gonna have them vacant for months.
Well, I think
where if somebody at least is occupied there through Airbnb that are reputable people, it's just hard to understand why you're gonna force people to keep their homes vacant, non-occupied. I mean, the occupied ones, the people are gonna be there themselves. The people that like to leave, make a little extra money, they're gonna be limited. Some people, like they said, they're not gonna be able to afford to do that. Where it's hard to understand why the days are limited and somebody can't stay in that house when it's sitting there non-occupied.
Yes, sir.
I just want to follow up with that, Brian Spang from Kaywood. I don't understand the 120 days either. If I have a non-owner occupied place and it's going to be sitting vacant, why would I have that? Why would I want it just sitting there? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever as far as that. So I don't understand that rule at all.
Thank you. I'm going to close this down. I don't mean to limit people's ability to comment. I certainly appreciate all your comments. Looking at this, I'll note one, that we are grandfathered in non-owner occupied dwellings, and we will not take that away from someone. Two, we've got some decisions to make about the number of days per year. 120 is it's what some other townships have done. It's less limiting than some places, but it's something we need to talk about and think about. The other comment is I think we need to talk about parking and the use of stone versus paving and such like that. And if we have driveways that are stone driveways, we're going to make you put a concrete pad to the side of it. So I think that's something that we need to talk about and think about. I appreciate everybody's comments and participation. We're going to do our best. Yes, sir.
I would like to call a couple words.
Yep.
A couple things. I appreciate everybody talking and everything, and we're trying to put an ordinance together here that meets 80% of the needs. We're not going to get 100%. From what I heard here tonight, I heard a lot of, not my property. I want to do it, we can't make an ordinance that says, okay, it's this way, but we're going to let this one do that or that one do that. So from that aspect, I think we're going to do the best we can to get the best ordinance out we can. Now, I don't want to deal with individual needs. I need to know when we're talking and we're hearing these things, what's the best for everybody? What's the best compromise? So that's what we're going to be working on. I agree with the parking. I think if I take my house, which I'm a resident, and I want to add to my driveway, I want to put a parking pad in, whatever, I got to get a site plan to Todd. So Todd's going to sit there and look and make sure I'm inside all the setbacks and it's okay to put it there. So if you're going to have an Airbnb and you're going to expand the amount of parking, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put a site plan in. And at that point, we're going to say, yeah, here's the site plan's this, and this is what you got to put in. I would be in favor of whatever your current driveway is, you can match it on a new site plan. I don't know why we were sitting here playing this game of why I want to add to. That's just somebody saying, I'm going to try to get around the rules. We're going to make the rules, and that's what they're going to be. The second thing is in the answer to Mr. Hurwitz, which all the stuff he threw down there early, we have two options here. We can make an ordinance like this and try to accommodate the short-term rentals, but back in, when it goes all down to the bottom line, if we can't do that, we got one other option. No short-term rentals in residential areas. Because that's what the Supreme Court does, that's what, we can say that one and nobody challenges that one. So we either work with this, and I'm at the point right now where I know where there's a lot of questions, but I'm ready to send it to planning. Let them hash it out, because they always come back with really good suggestions for us. So I'm ready to send this to planning. I have having a couple more sessions like this, I think we're gonna just be pushing it down the road and kicking the can down the road. So I'd be for pushing it to let them discuss it and go there. And Mark's holding his hand up.
I just want to clarify, this would not go to the planning
Oh,
commission. All they would be doing is talking about adding short-term rental and long-term rental as a accessory use in residential districts. and adding definitions. So
Well,
I just want to be clear, this would not go,
Okay.
next Monday night's planning commission, should you send it, it would only be those definitions and things.
Well, that's why it says here at the bottom, you know, reviewed by the planning commission. Is that what you're talking about?
Just the addition of definitions and the use. And it would just be for them to provide a recommendation back to you. They wouldn't be approving anything.
I think we take that step while we're making all these little adjustments. That would be my.
Can I make comments based on what I asked you earlier, if that's okay?
Sure.
Okay. Because
Yes,
I think
you
that
may.
they should know when I was reading this, I had some confusion first of all, but I read that, okay, that was, when I was reading about the parking, I don't know how I feel about, I kind of agree that the parking, hazards of parking should be providing. I'm not sure how I feel about all of that. But the one thing that I have problems with most, and I still have problems with, is that if you have a house with 4 bedrooms, but you only have 2 parking spaces on your property. When we go and rent an Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever, they tell us the number of cars that we are allowed to have. If we have 8 cars coming in and 6 spaces, we carpool. That's what we do. And I think that we need to consider, like you said, people, and I can't remember the neighborhood, you said only have 3 bedrooms, but only have 2 cars, 2 parking spaces. I just don't know if I think that's particularly right in saying that you can only rent 2 of those bedrooms, you can only advertise it for 4 people when it's actually a 6-person place or whatever it is. So I still have some problems with that. I don't think I've really made any more comments. I would certainly be willing to discuss, something that's already gravel, that, I would be certainly willing to discuss that, and what the nature is of the original form of the driveway, or the parking. But that's probably, there was one more thing that we discussed that I asked you about, that I want out. When you said, in, 3-3.8, no, 3-3.9 E6. When you said record of all dates and dwelling was used in the previous year as a short-term rental property, failure to provide accurate records or providing fraudulent records will constitute the first violation of the renewal period. I would like to say that failure to provide accurate records will be a first violation, because sometimes you make a mistake and that would be considered inaccuracy or whatever, but fraudulent to me is a loss of all permit, because that is something that's deliberately done. Beyond deliberate. So I just put that out there.
All right. Well, a lot of the people here have said exactly the same things they've been saying at every meeting we've discussed this, so it's nothing new. We've heard it from you, and you're going to hear it from me again then, because my bottom line here is to protect the residential communities, but allow reasonable use of your property to make a little extra money. Reasonable use. Now, I think we're pretty accommodating, saying if you've already invested in a property that you're only going to Airbnb, that we're going to let you continue to do that and leave it vacant for now. That's a give. We don't have to give. And again, Frank said it, we could just shut it all down. And other municipalities have more restrictive ordinances. Anybody thinking that it wasn't going to happen here when they bought a property and they want to make a business out of it really wasn't thinking clearly, in my opinion, because it's bound to happen. It is. People want to protect their neighborhoods. I want to keep our neighborhoods more affordable. And if people are competing with people that are trying to buy a property just to Airbnb it because it's more lucrative than buying a property as an investment just to rent it, then you're driving properties up, or even to live in. There's an example right in my neighborhood where somebody interested in Airbnb was pushing and ended up pushing the price up. The family got it anyway, but they paid more than they should have. because it's just not reasonable. One of the people that commented says, "Oh, you're interfering with my business." Well, you live in a residential area. Your home, or any home, business, I don't know. Property has been rented full-time since time immemorial. I mean, come on, everybody, but it's more considered an investment. Some people, you make a little money on it, sure you can. But the problem is, what we're seeing, and again, we don't want vacant properties in our neighborhoods, and we're doing that give, we recommend that, but at the same time, if we let this continue and allow vacant properties to just be Airbnb, our neighborhoods are going to deteriorate. There's just no doubt about it. And prices are going to go up. People won't be able to afford to move here. We're losing revenue from income taxes because Airbnb guests don't pay income tax. If you own a property in the township and you live somewhere else and all you're doing is Airbnb in it and making a profit on it, we're not getting a penny of that. We're getting your real estate tax because you own the property. We're not getting your income tax. Yes, Liberty Hill is a condominium association. It's a 55 and over community. It's something that was very new to us when it came in, and I think we did a pretty good job making sure it fit the township pretty well. Sure, some of those properties are going to be vacant a long time, but the way the neighborhood's laid out, you can't tell because that's the type of community it is. But when you see neighborhoods with single-family homes and a bunch of them are vacant, it's really obvious, and it's not right. And people are saying, and some of the people that are advocating for let's let you do it year-round. Well, that was my original thought, was the market, but the enforceability is our problem here, and so if we have to compromise with that to allow ourselves to actually enforce this and not lose in court, oh well, then I'm sorry to a few people that are going to not be able to make as much money on their property as they could. Now, also, I know the people that are doing this could still afford to just rent their Airbnb property year-round, like I do with an investment property, I should say, my wife and I do, and it's fine. And it's an investment. The property increases in value. Yeah, we're gonna be able to give our kids some money when we finally sell it, and that's reasonable. I just don't think it's reasonable to think that you can rent your property year-round. Again, I was willing to allow this to happen if it was enforceable, and if you're already doing it, but it can't be done with us being able to enforce it. But my main concern here is protecting the neighborhoods, keeping our property values reasonable, and making sure the township gets reasonable revenue from properties. That would include full-year rentals that the owners most likely are paying income tax unless they're retired. So I think mostly what's here is reasonable. We could tweak a few things. Tracy brought up the bedroom thing, parking space per bedroom. Yeah, maybe. It's gonna be hard to enforce because we have on-street parking allowed in most of our streets in the township. So what are we gonna do about that? We see somebody from out of town or out-of-state vehicle, we can't identify it. Maybe it's hard to say. And there's always going to be some that slip through the cracks. You can't cover everything. So I'm not so sure about that one. I'm willing to talk about that one. Gravel parking, if your driveway's paved, you shouldn't slap down some gravel just to accommodate another one. If your driveway's not paved, and anywhere in this ordinance that say if you're renting your property year-round, it's requiring you to pave your driveway, is it? We don't have that. That's only for the short-term rentals, which I think is reasonable, having parking spaces like that. So we're not hurting people that have a gravel driveway. The life safety issues are very important to me. It's not really hard to comply. I did all the work myself on our investment property. Not a big deal. There's nothing earth-shattering you have to do to bring your property up to code. Some people may not be able to do it themselves, but it's still not going to be all that expensive to do. So that's very important to me. And other than that, I think I'll pass the baton to the next person that wants to comment.
I've shared my thoughts.
Yeah, I am, yeah. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, I think we're all concerned about the character of our communities. We are grandfathering in any non-owner occupied properties at this time, so we're not taking something away from somebody. We have to discuss the topic of the number of days per year. And we need to address the parking and particularly gravel parking and whether or not that can be done in a way that's appropriate and not, like somebody said, not just dump a truckload of stone down and call it a parking place. So I'm not sure how we do that, but I think that's on our list. Thank you, everybody. We're going to keep working. We're going to try to do our best.
See if Dennis has anything else to say.
No, he doesn't.
Got the next one. Let's go.
This one made me laugh.
This disruption.
Oh.
This made me laugh.
Just give it a second.
Remember, I just said, I couldn't help but laugh. I just laughed.
Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda. We're going to talk about the proposed sign ordinance amendments. Bud's still here, huh?
Can I say something?
We have another thing come up.
Hey, can I say something real quick? I make a motion that we move this minor change to the CRPC and schedule a public hearing at a future meeting. I think that would be appropriate. I make that motion.
I second.
On the
On-
big document, the
On
blue
this,
one.
on the blue one, change, unchanged.
Post side ordinance.
I didn't have any problems with changes.
I laughed.
Okay.
I made a motion.
A motion, we have a second.
I seconded it
Second.
already.
Any comments? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That was good, Frank.
You want me to do the next one?
Oh, can I,
We're not, we'll get quick.
I move to adopt proposed ordinance number 376.
I second that.
Comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No. Motion passes.
How many of the changes in here were picked up through an automatic AI kind of system grammatically? And I'm sort of curious about that.
It's all done by hand. By mind.
Okay.
Are you sure Microsoft Word didn't make suggestions?
I didn't discover ChatGPT until after that project was done.
It
You
wasn't
didn't use
AI.
Microsoft, you
It
didn't
wasn't
use
AI,
the
it was
Word
TS.
sheet, did you?
Well, some of them showed up.
I bet you didn't, I bet
Yeah.
you didn't use.
We went through it line by line.
I'm sure you did, you have all the grammatic power in your brain.
My daughter was just with us last week, and she said 80% of her work is AI generated. Frightening.
That doesn't work here too well.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, but it's sort of frightening to me.
It doesn't work when you're submitting English papers either, according to my wife. She can track it.
Okay. Let's do the update on radar speed signs.
Can we ask him
I'm ready for it.
Do we have a
You
sergeant
can
on?
ask, but, yeah, so a couple of months ago now, the township purchased two radar speed monitoring signs from All Traffic Solutions. Last month, I was giving a little preview to everybody before the meeting started, and Bruce suggested maybe I could do an actual run-through of it real quick here. So we have these two currently out. I'll show you a map here. This shows where they're located. We have one on Bollesburg Pike, so if people are driving south towards the Military Museum, it's collecting data for those. And we have one on West Main Street heading east, and it sounds like Mr. Morrell here has tried to, at least on his bicycle, get a picture taken at some point. So how this works is these signs, we can customize how they're set up. We can change the parameters of what speeds are going to be displayed, when they're going to flash at you when you're going too fast. Apparently in Pennsylvania, you're not allowed to use the strobe effect on them, because they do have a strobe light that'll go if you're going too fast, but apparently that's not allowed. Regardless, what's nice about it is it allows us to get a good understanding of how many vehicles are traveling on the roadway, how fast they're going, when they're going fast, and actually, too, the effectiveness of the signs when they're turned on to get people to slow down. Because the signs can be off, but still collecting data. But when you turn them on, it does have a noticeable impact on people's speeds. Because when they start seeing they're going too fast and it's flashing at them, they do slow down. So, as I mentioned, another nice thing, too, is we can collect photos
Oops.
of people that are...
Did you find me?
No, I don't think so. So, for example, this was a high-speed event at 7:44 this evening on Bollesburg Pike.
Oh, it's gotta be Nigel.
And right,
Oh.
the photos
already
aren't the
here.
greatest, but that vehicle was clearly... Todd, you were here, so you're okay.
I was here.
Did
We
you see the
can't...
disappointment in his face when you said we couldn't use a strobe?
You can't use this, obviously, to enforce anything, right? This is not a situation where we can utilize this to say to the police, look, see, sometimes you get no picture, too. If they're going that fast, you just don't.
That's right, what was the speed?
What was the speed? They were going 40 in this particular case. Yeah, so this is, they're in a 25, they're going 40.
Oh, gee.
Here's
yeah.
another one, no photo, they were going 40 as well. That one was going 41, no photo. It's not perfect.
But it might be going towards you, and
It's-
then by the time they got the picture, it might have been.
Right. And I also noticed that the sign on West Main Street, I think because of all of the, kind of the shrubbery and things out there, you end up not getting very good photos at all, most of them. You just get a
Oh,
picture.
that was like my car.
But see, that's a car going away, so that wouldn't trip that. I don't know that I've gotten more than maybe 1 or 2 pictures on West Main Street.
What's the max speed you've picked up on either one?
On either one, I think on
Anyone
Bulls,
doing 50, 55?
I think on Bollesburg Pike, we had some that were going pretty quickly. Let me see if I can figure out how to, tell you what, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for this one. If I can find my screen share option here. And I'm gonna share the, some of the reports that we got from this. So, what this allows us to do is we can download a variety. I think there's 7 different reports that we can utilize. And, let's see if this works. It's gonna be on, there we go. Wait a minute, I just shared the same thing again. Sorry about that. I gotta find the right file here that's open. Where am I at? I can't find my, there it is. Challenge here tonight. There it is. These are the reports that we can download. So, let me just drag.
You got the same one?
That's the same.
No, I know. I got to drag this over to the other screen. It's hard sometimes managing 2 screens at once, and the computer doesn't want to cooperate. So here we go. So here's an example. This is a compliance and risk report. It shows it by time, and it was for the range of August 4th through the 10th. So you can see that, at midnight you had 6 vehicles that were compliant, 4 that were low risk, none that were medium risk, none that were high risk. High risk means they're going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. So it's 25 on West Main Street. That means that in the situation here where at 1 o'clock in the morning, someone was going over 45 miles an hour down the road. Overall, I think West Main Street has far less violations than you find on Bollesburg Pike. So,
And it shows you the peak hour of heavy traffic flow.
right.
Yeah, that,
I have a comment about that.
Yeah.
Because of the pretty steep downhill on the Bollesburg Pike as you're heading towards that sign, you gotta ride the brakes, and people just don't do that. Plus, the visibility looks fine to most people. They see there's just
Yeah.
grass on the right from the military museum, the homes on the left are set back, and it honestly feels unnatural to go that slow.
Right.
At the going, and honestly, I think you ought to put the camera at the top of the hill just before just before it crests before Harris, there's a good sign that would be perfect for that, because that's where it starts getting iffy. When you're cresting a hill, blind, hill, and Harris is you can't see very well coming out of that, and so I'd like to see it moved up there for some research on that, because I know it was a no-brainer to me that you're going to find more violations going down the hill, especially since that speed limit was only reduced a year or so ago, like that.
Yeah, and we are going to move these around to other
yeah,
locations. It was put there because we had a post there. That was the reason why we put it there when we did.
Well, there's a no parking sign in a perfect place on going up on the right-hand side.
I surmise that you drive that road a lot.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, and put it on the uphill side.
Yeah, I think, and I'm very aware of it, of course, and it's still, if I'm not thinking, I might end up going 30 or so. I always went less than 35 on the Pike going up the hill anyway. Going down the hill, it's just like you're sailing, and at 5:45 in the morning when there isn't a soul around, and if you're walking without some sort of reflective clothing, then on not facing traffic, then you need to have your head examined. You need lights or reflective clothing. So it's just, anyway, so I'm gone on enough, but
the numbers can't be transferred to the State College Police because we can't use radar at local level. So
right.
It's sort of a accumulated data.
Yeah, this is not an enforcement tool. This is a data collection tool and a traffic calming tool. So this speed effectiveness report is a good example. It shows on the far right the percentage of vehicles that were slowed when they saw their speed. So you're seeing when people saw their speed, you're getting up to 50% of the drivers are hitting their brakes and at least slowing down a little bit. Whether or not they're slowing down to put them down in a very low risk category, maybe not, but nonetheless, it is having an impact on their driving behaviors. But you're right, it's mostly for data collection, and I know we had talked about a traffic calming policy. The board had asked staff to work on that, and it's something we still need to, if the board's still interested, we need to go back and take another look at it because of the changes that the state made. But these tools can come in very handy to understand how fast people are driving and whether or not we actually have a speeding problem on a roadway.
And the use of painted white lines is contingent upon having a clear vision distance between those white lines, and whether we could do that on Main or the Pike.
Right, and here's an example of this is a volume by speed. You can see here the different speed thresholds. Thankfully, nobody's going in this far right, but you have a handful of cars here that are in the 51, well, maybe just one car in the 51 to 50. Oh, down here you have more. 51 to 55 range. So people are going down the Pike, and I get, Nigel's saying it's a wide road. It feels comfortable to drive faster there.
Not that
Obviously,
fast.
taking it further up, what's it going to look like? Maybe it won't be quite as high, but nonetheless, you have people that are going. Well, actually, you have one over here in the 61 to 65 range, right here at what is that? 4 o'clock. So 4 in the afternoon.
It was probably one of our volunteer firefighters getting down here in a hurry.
What's your call?
Who knows?
I don't know. I can always try to correlate that data, I guess.
Might have been a call.
Could have been. So I just wanted to share this with the board so you can see what these signs are doing for us in terms of being able to collect data. I think it's a useful tool, and we have had some positive feedback from residents. They're excited about them. They wish that they were going to be permanently mounted to the sign, and I have to tell them, sorry, they're expensive. We're going to have to move it around to get other information because they felt it has slowed traffic down.
Who gets excited about it?
Residents. They're excited.
They get excited about that?
They like seeing these signs out there. They feel they're having an impact on speed.
Excited.
They do have general impact on speed.
It's just to get ones, I mean, these were
At least initially.
$5,000 a piece. If you get ones that have solar, power to them, they're a little more, but to have them permanently mounted is great. It's just, the demand would be.
Are these battery operated?
People will eventually, it's the same thing with every other
They
thing
get
that you
used to
have.
it.
They get used to them and they, but I think they're important to move around to remind people.
Yeah, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm sure there's some element of familiarity with roadways. When you become familiar, traffic calming measures, I'm sure, are not as impactful because you know the road. When you're on a new road and you're like, oh, there's a speed bump there, or there's these white lines that are making me feel like I'm, getting closed in and I'm going to have to slow down. I don't know that you have that as much when you know your road, where you're used to that sign flashing at you when you go 45 and
The
25.
strobe.
The strobe light.
That you're disappointed about.
You just smile for the picture and go by, right?
It also gives us a tool to respond to residents when
Yeah.
they say, we think we have a speeding problem on this road. And we can say, look, we've gone out, we've collected the data, here are the data.
Right.
And that was a couple of years ago, we had that appeal from people saying,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And,
Yeah.
that's the reaction we did.
It's not going away.
No. I think it's a good idea.
Other comments?
I like the data.
All right, fire police.
So the ARC of Center County is requesting use of the Bollesburg Fire Police for traffic control on September 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for their Strongman event at Wasson Farm, and their rain date is September 21st.
You were too fast. Move to approve the use of Bollesburg Fire Police on September 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If the event is canceled due to weather, Bollesburg Fire Police can be utilized on September 21st for the same time period.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Okay. Pennsylvania Municipal League Resolutions Delegate.
And I will note Supervisor Hammeister is no longer planning to attend that event, so I don't know that you'll be able to have an alternate delegate appointed.
Are you going?
I was going to go, I guess, if I
You
can.
go, you would
Okay.
be the elder.
There you go.
I wish I could go, but it's not a.
All right. Move to appoint Frank Harden as voting delegate and Mark Belkel as alternate delegate for the Pennsylvania Municipal League Resolutions Committee meeting and annual business meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
How's my
Motion
speed
carries.
reading?
Manager's report.
Okay, I've got a few things on here tonight I want to speak to the board about. First is, I assume you all got an email from Cato about their upcoming convention, the end of September?
No.
Okay, I will forward it on to you. It's September the 30th. It's going to be held at Toff Trees this year. They've moved it to Toff Trees. So,
What was the date?
September the 30th. So I'll forward out the email. Just let Deb know if you'd like to attend, and she can get you registered to go to that. The first item I want to bring up is item number 1. The Planning Commission is finalizing their recommendations for amendments to the Village Zoning District. They'd like to present their recommendations to the board before proceeding with drafting any updated ordinances. And I think potential dates could be September 15th, which is the Planning Commission date, or your second meeting date in September, which is the 24th. Regardless, we need to know so we can advertise this is a joint meeting for them to share their thoughts with you.
I like to keep it September 24th because we should be in charge.
It's up to the board. Whatever you'd like, I can
We're
talk to
always
the
in
planning commission about it.
I'm just saying.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will have Deb advertise for September 24th and try and make sure we're going to have some planning commission members available. Number 3, I wanted to highlight, as of July 30th, the property at 102 Wyndham Circle is in substantial compliance with township ordinances. The property could still use many improvements to blend in with the surrounding neighborhood, but we do not have any ordinances that address that level of upkeep. So the property owner installed new siding on one side of the house, addressing some of the issues they had with insulation blowing around. And then the other uninspected vehicle, they have one left, which they're allowed to have. The other one was donated to the fire company. Their grass has been kept mowed, and they are, we keep monitoring that, but they've also been clearing brush, and I have offered to them that we will be happy to come out and help collect that brush, even in non-brush collection times, just to keep that momentum going, knowing that it might, result in them getting that property cleaned up even more so. Just wanted to make you aware you've had residents here from the Willowbrook neighborhood multiple times bringing it up to you, and feel pretty good we were able to finally get compliance, at least to this degree. Number 4, I got a request to have a bridge named in honor of a former resident and military veteran, and I wanted to see if the board is at all interested in having a memorial bridge program. I'd have to look in to see how other municipalities do it, if you are, but
A little background, I think, would be useful.
As far as their request
Well-
or how other municipalities do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I can look into it if you're interested. I think the former resident in question, they said, ran a business on Main Street. And I think the person is Robert Chalmer Moore is who they were hoping to have it. Yeah,
Bob Moore?
that's who they were hoping to have it named after.
If there's any of this appropriate, that would be it.
Yeah, Bob Moore.
If there's any of this appropriate.
Owned a business at West Main?
Started, revitalized the Boy Scout troop,
Yep.
brought it back to life, did many things. He is,
It's very good.
full-blooded, I believe, Algonquin, I'm not sure.
They mentioned in here how he had a Native American craft, I think, yeah.
War veteran.
Yep, he definitely is. But I would be, I'm in favor of the concept, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think that we need to look
I
into
think-
it.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Because
We can do it.
you do for one, I don't know what that.
I didn't want to spend time on it if there was no interest, so that's
Well,
why.
I think the thing I think that we need to know, whether we can do it is one thing, but when it comes to the criteria on who
Right.
we approve to do it, that's what we would need to work.
Yeah, and also things like,
Because,
you know,
we
you
don't
have
want
a.
to just have,
Bud Graham Memorial.
Yeah,
It's a
but
budget.
if you have an individual bridge in a neighborhood,
Bob
that
Memorial's,
people might call like the so-and-so
yeah, there's a name.
road bridge, or,
Yeah.
I mean, do they want it renamed? Do they, you know, I mean, this is a township basically of neighborhoods. We don't have a bunch of highways to name and a bunch of this to name and a bunch of that to name, so, you know, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, it's just as easy to do a park bench or do a, you know, so I don't know.
I see
I
these
said
all,
look into it.
I see these all the
Give us some
time.
background.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look into it and give you some background.
I'll make you a comment about that. Bud Graham, resident. Harris Township has many well-known veterans. And this is strictly for veterans, what you're talking about, probably, or
Their request just highlighted that he was a veteran and a
Well, I
longtime
think
resident.
veterans are very
Yes.
appropriate, and there's a lot of them, you're right, you have to pick certain criteria to be that. But this gentleman, when you first come out, I thought, oh boy, here we go. But this gentleman certainly would qualify for something, so that's all that is.
The Cape Farm Food one, is that a DEP approved site?
It is. Well, yeah, they've received grants from DEP for their equipment, so yes.
Well, receiving equipment is different than having.
Now, as
a
far as I
DEP
understand it,
approved
it's an
leachate program put together.
It's an approved site where we're
Okay,
allowed to dump.
okay.
We've been dumping there for years. It was just, we wanted to formalize because they are running out of space and they need some, you know, some of the stuff moved around so we can create space for ourselves.
Okay.
So, number 5, I wanted to bring up about the cat colony that I've been getting complaints about in Country Place Park. I never imagined I'd be learning so much about cat colonies, but I learned a lot.
Welcome to my world.
So, we believe it's the result of feral cats probably being dumped in the park, as well as an individual residing at Harvest Fields that has a large number of feral cats. So I've been in touch with this Hope Stream Rescue and Sanctuary to discuss possibly having a trap, neuter, and return program. That's what they recommended we look at because there's no space in the kennels for these,
No, they're not.
you know, at the rescues, and they're feral cats on top of that. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. I think the Parks Committee is in favor of it because at this point you go to Country Place Park and you'll see cats pretty regularly and they're having a lot of kittens and it's just gonna keep growing. So it'll impact wildlife and other things the more you have. And
Is that Hope Dream Rescue a local operation?
they are, I believe, based out of Howard. But they are willing to come out and help us with trapping them. I think we can get vouchers from Paws to have the cats neutered. The only thing we would need to pay for if the board was, you know, if we're okay with doing it, would be $10 to give these cats a rabies vaccination, which I think being in a park
Absolutely.
makes a lot of sense. We don't want someone getting attacked or
Oh,
what
yeah,
have you.
that'd be me.
So-
Me out there.
That's something that I wanted to bring to your attention. And the last thing is,
Could we address, is there a way that we could address people that feed the feral cats?
so I spoke with these folks, and they're very passionate about cats. What they explained to me was we're going to need to do a letter writing, you know, send out some letters to folks, letting them know that they're going to need to stop feeding the cats temporarily, so they'll go into our traps because we're going to have traps set up. But after that, they said if you don't feed them, they're just going to decimate your wildlife. And so right now, I believe there's someone out there who is feeding these cats pretty regularly. Right, is it you, Frank?
I'm a very good expert on this whole thing.
Sure.
This colony's been there for a long time. We've homed, I don't know how many that we've trapped and socialized and got out. But my wife, with her arthritis, and we just can't do it anymore. But our neighbors have, a lot of the people, their cats, if you look at their domestic cats, they came from that area where they were trapped. And we had some that Kevin was one. He was an outdoor cat, and he went to everybody's house.
Kevin.
But we all took turns taking them to the vets. For the most part, what's out there now we can't control. You'll see the if we could just catch the females and neuter them, we'd be fine, because you get 2 or 3 litters a year, and they're disappearing. I think they're being hawks, whatever the animals that are around, but they're there, and like I said, I think we've saturated the people that live there for pets. Unless our pets start dying, it's just getting harder to do them. So if they can trap them, and I'll tell you what they're going to find when they go in there and trap them. They're going to find some that already have their ears clipped, that have already been neutered and spayed. So people do that out there, and the ones that are feeding them will capture them. We'll get them to the vets and stuff like that. But the young ones are the ones, and there's a lot of them every year, and they're standoffish. They're hard to catch. They don't trap. And that's the ones that you see with what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the other aspect too is where the ones are coming down from harvest fields. My understanding is, from talking to these cat experts, that's not unreasonable to have them travel that far from up near the lodge down to the park. They'll interact. They'll come down there to hunt, what have you, and it's
Go down Bow Avenue, right there in front of Country Place where my house is. You'll see at least once a week. You'll see a cat on the road.
So
there's a lot of them.
Does this hope stream then bring them back here and release them?
So
what's the next
well,
stage of this?
that's another matter, is they are not going to take them up. They don't have a place to necessarily keep them. So we're going to have to find a place to have these cats at least for a 24-hour period while they are coming out of anesthesia. They said when a cat has anesthesia, they have to be in a climate-controlled environment. Otherwise, they can't regulate their body temperature. So we're going to have to find volunteers or a place where we can keep the cats. We don't have a good climate-controlled environment that I can guarantee isn't going to be too hot or too cold, that like a garage or something, because these cats will likely smell and leave odors.
They don't smell after you have them.
Well, they warned me to put down like shower curtains and things, because you're going to have.
Because they may pee.
Right.
But they don't. They don't provide.
I just don't have a place to do that. I mean, we don't have a lot of. That's climate control.
Our neighbors would, I think, if you go to Country Place, if you talk to, like we would have, I could put them in my garage. I have cages. I have the little animal cages. Let's put them in there.
But the problem is it going to be warm enough,
But are they eventually released?
Yes, they're released back to the park, but at least then they're not going to continue to have more cats. So eventually, over time, the colony will dwindle, or at least get smaller. But you're still going to have people that are going to always be dumping, unfortunately.
The breeding cycle.
Right, and the other thing too is we could expand this and put some traps up in Tussey Pond Park to capture those cats that are maybe migrating down.
The more you get, the better you're gonna be.
Exactly. I've seen them up at Harvest Fields. There's a lot of them up there by the lodge if you go up that way.
I'd release them in the next township over.
Well, the other thing you have to do, the other thing you have to do is you have to find a vet who will accept the voucher.
Well, that was one thing.
Some vets will not accept the vouchers completely.
This Hope Dreams Rescue folks did say they have someone. They were actually going to help line it up with them to basically take the cats we bring.
Yeah, we have a vet over here.
Well, I think this was a vet elsewhere that they said would take the voucher and would cover 100%. So that's what we were looking at. But the last thing I wanted to bring up on my manager's report was number 7, which that is that the township's electricity contract with Dynegy is going to expire here in September. In the past, we would typically have you'd shop around a little bit, bring you the ideas, and enter into prices and enter into a new contract. Speaking with Pam Adams over at the COG, with the anticipated construction of the solar facility related to the SPPA, most of the participating entities are entering into agreements with NRG and Direct Energy to help bridge the PPA, because that's who we're going to have to work with anyway. So I was recommending at this point, based on the idea that at some point that's gonna be our supplier, it sounds like that was the route that most everyone else has found easiest, is just to enter into a, I'm sorry? Just to go with direct energy and, you know, not necessarily go through the whole pricing and whatnot to get electricity. So if you're all okay with that, that's the route I'll go. And we can get our contract squared away with them. That was all I had, unless you have any questions about my report.
Okay, anybody? Okay. Approval of vouchers.
Move to approve voucher transmittal sheet number 2025-7. Doesn't say.
Sure.
It's in here.
I'll say it.
$284,315.67.
There you go.
I have a question on one. 2944. Background screening? To whom are we screening, or to what are we screening? Mark, who are we screening, Mark?
Hire right? So we have to do background, or not background screen. I don't know why it says background screening. That is drug testing for CDL drivers. So every quarter we get a random draw. This is the folks who have to go basically get tested either for drugs or alcohol, and that's what that is.
I didn't realize it was under the highway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes. Okay, executive committee reports. Executive committee approved the agenda for the meeting we were all at.
Sure.
Parks Capital did not meet. Does have an upcoming meeting. Parks Governance is still spinning their wheels, but the step now is still working on the Articles Agreement and the codifying how the relationship would be with the Parks Committee and the authority and the agency and how that would work. The Park Authority, I guess the big news, and you all heard, is that the Whitehall Road Regional Park is open.
Yeah, it was nice of them, as light as all of the open.
There will be a grand opening.
Quick question
Yeah.
for you. Have you got somebody that's gonna jump into the Park Authority whenever you go to your wherever, happy hunting grounds or wherever you're going?
Yeah.
Wait, that's not a nice thing to say.
Whatever they do.
I've got two candidates in mind.
That's it, this side.
All right, as long as you got candidates in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Park Authority has been reviewing the fees, and you'll see that.
Are we gonna get remember we talked about, like, when they do the programs, they're gonna be more, kind of open about what they're charging, and, you know, if the program is successful and what our return is on the program, you know, you're giving us some information on that?
They are actively working on that. In particular, I've been asking for feedback on the amount of cost recovery.
That's what I'm looking for.
So, and obviously, you know, we're not a for-profit organization.
No, I never said we
But
were, but we
we
need
need-
to
we
know
need-
where we're spending money.
We need to know where we're spending money, we need to know if we're spending it efficiently, and we need to recognize maybe there's some things we spend money on that we may not be covering all the costs, but it has a community benefit. I'll give one example, swim lessons.
Swimming lessons,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Well, I'll give an example. One, I'd really like to know how many people attend.
Juggling.
Circus skills. I'd like to
You
know how
have
many
no-
people attend circus skills a year.
Well, and balanced against what, we have a volunteer doing the program.
That's fine, but we still gotta pay something for it.
Yeah, no, I agree, but we need to know about the balance.
Yeah.
And not just look at it as a profit center, but rather are we efficiently offering things?
If you have a volunteer doing it and you have a pay scale, my bet is it's covering itself. Just you relax.
Okay, let's move on to human resources.
Okay, we met last week, and we approve the 2026 budgets for the Employee Relations Committee and the Wellness Program. That very popular and good for COG, employee morale and employee health. So I have numbers, but I won't read them unless anybody really wants them. We had a review of the dental vision plan. Because currently, right now, employees have to pay for their services up front and get reimbursement, and there's been some issues with that with some of the employees. So we're looking into a process so they more insurance oriented rather than just a thing like that. They probably will do that, and I don't know if that's going to have to go to general forum or if that's a staff thing. And one more.
Do we have an HSA?
No.
We should, and that way you don't have to worry
Well,
about that.
we're in a pool
I
with
know.
other municipalities for self-insurance, and including
I know.
COG.
So would we.
And here, what, right?
But you can have an HSA, then what you do is you say, okay,
Oh,
we're gonna give you so much money in the HSA a year, and if they wanna use it for dental classes, whatever, then you don't have to get into all these little
Yeah.
spills.
No,
They're
off
on
the
their
top
own.
of my head, I do not know if the COG offers an HSA instead of,
They don't.
Well, they didn't anyway. I think
I
you have
don't-
to have a high deductible plan in
Yeah,
order
you
to
do.
qualify, and they don't have a high deductible plan.
You do, and
Right.
it makes it easy.
well, yeah, you need a high deductible
I
plan
don't
to
know
do
that
that.
having a high deductible plan to qualify for an HSA.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, you do.
can't establish
Oh, I'm
that.
through, I'm
But it's not
familiar
as
with
high
this
as you
because
think.
of the school district,
It's not as high as you think.
benefits. It's actually, well,
It's a question.
My family high deductible was $2,500 a year.
well,
It's a question.
yeah, and then one more thing, we have two representatives from the committee that are elected or signed every year to hear possible complaints about harassment if the harassee doesn't feel comfortable addressing anybody on staff. And there was just HR developed a reference guide on how this should be dealt with, the actual responsibilities of these individuals. As far as I know, in my entire tenure here, we haven't had a single harassment complaint in the COG. And
I was
that's,
just wondering what you said. I'm like, well, I agree that there should be a process. I
oh
totally
yeah,
agree.
it has to be there.
They never got Bud on there.
Huh?
They never got
Well,
Bud
he's
on
not it would be different. He's not an employee of the COG. No, he's not an employee. And climate action sustainability was canceled. And that's all.
Mr. Haymeister.
Solar Power did not meet, but Mark and I attended the Lucy Committee, and it was actually the first pretty open discussion about the public sewer in Hessfield. And I think it boils down to putting together an exception for the running of sewer to COG-owned properties outside the regional growth sewer service area.
Do we have to do that?
So, pardon?
Do we do that? Our township, does this township do
The
that?
idea
Yeah.
would be that it would be in the implementation agreement, that they wouldn't, that those properties wouldn't have to go through a DRI.
Yeah.
I think the question on who votes for that, that's a different matter. I personally think it probably should be a regional vote, just so that you don't have a municipality then saying to the region, whether it be us or somebody else, you have to serve sewer to this. But you don't have to go through that month-long process of submitting and preparing all this information. If COG's interested in doing something, why are they gonna convince themselves to do it, I guess was my
Yeah.
thought behind it.
And we got into the difference between a minor and a major
Yeah.
revision, and Pam is putting together a one-page sheet sort of summarizing everything we talked about, but it's not gonna be fast. I could see this being a couple-year process. So, we'll keep you up to date on that. The other part was really a nice presentation that Pam did on data that they put together on the trends, and they put a handout together, existing land use, housing, demographics, transportation, and open space. And there is more data Each of these is a separate 5-page item, talks about all kinds of good data. Never knew we had so much information on data and housing, but good stuff. And it'll be coming down to the planning commissions and to us eventually. But good discussion. He skipped out on that one.
I
so.
did.
Because he used to do it. He used to give it to me when I was on.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he was the resource from Pam when we talked about
Oh, really?
this. Well, that was before you left.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used your name.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Keep an eye open though for the Hessfield discussion. I didn't realize that the authority had moved on bringing in a trailer unit for sewage and removed it. They're bringing it from Harrisburg and up here and down. So that's going to be an expensive kind of venture if they keep doing that.
Well, that was gonna be a,
Trial?
a demonstration,
Okay.
so people could come and see what it looks like and have a feel for what it is.
Yeah.
And the rental was, I don't have the numbers, but the rental was easily absorbed
Okay.
for that one-time event.
I went the day after the weekend, it was gone. I was gonna look at it and said, missed it. Did the authority get any feedback on it?
I haven't heard anything yet. The authority hasn't met since that point.
Interesting discussion came up though about the DEP stance on putting on-site sewer on that property. The phase that we're using to redo the park has 3 fields, and if we had to go to on-site sewer, we would lose the field. So there's some economics to look at in terms of how we proceed. Let's not put too much money into this temporary kind of situation and look more so at doing the on-site sewer, pumping it up to Fairfield.
Yeah, and I think that's the general consensus of the authority.
That was I think we talked about that too, so we'll keep you in touch. It'll be a flush idea.
You're up.
Oh, we didn't have anything in solar power.
No,
No.
it did not meet.
Okay, well, none of mine met, but I have a comment. Finance didn't meet last month, and I just started looking through things. Mr. Frank is committee chair on about 3 or 4 of our committees on COG. So he was out of town, so they all got canceled.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if when we sit down in committees this year, we should look at that and spread that chairmanship around a little bit to some of the other people and some of the other townships. So I think Rich is, I know he's finance, I know he's facilities, but he's on, I know there's another one he's on, but he left town, so we didn't meet.
That shouldn't necessarily happen, because
Yeah,
there's a
vice
vice chair on
I know there's a
committees,
vice
and
chair, but
so,
like I'm saying, he left and they didn't meet, so.
well, it's,
But anyway, so nothing meant, I wouldn't meet MPO till the end of September, so I'm done.
Well, the facilities committee didn't meet, but that was because he was gone, and also there was somebody else gone, and then I was gone, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But the public safety committee is meeting tomorrow, and I am a little bit beside myself. I don't know what to say sometimes about, I know we have no say as far as Alpha Fire Company or them putting a new roof on the Patton Township Firehouse or anything like that. But the amount of money that's going to these is just very concerning to me. I mean, how much money do we actually have, and when is everybody? Does this actually affect us in the long run? I think it actually does. So it's something that we need to consider what's being spent there. But I think the other thing that gets me is that when this grant came through for $15,000 for 2 solar-operated cars, and all of a sudden, these solar cars that were supposed to be purchased in 2026 are now have to be purchased in 2025 because of the big beautiful bill. My problem is this: these cars are $104,000+ for 2 of them. We have $15,000 for both of these, which is a 14%, all in all, decrease in the cost. With the time value of money and compounding, I'm not so sure that this is worth it. So what are we gonna do with these cars now? Because Walt's gonna turn around and scream, he wants them replaced in, what, 7 years or whatever he's gonna do. We don't know how long these cars are gonna last to begin with, and there are just 2 more cars that will be thrown into circulation for Walt. I'm having a lot of problems with the amount of cars in his fleet and his this, and the amount of money he's holding. And I grant you, I'm not sitting there and blaming him, because his job is to get as much as he possibly can for his sector. But my job and our job is to oversee this and make sure that taxpayer money is not being spent frivolously. And I don't know what his bank accounts look like, but having over $2 million in money makes it so I don't have much control of saying you can't do this or you can do this, or forcing us. I can say it, but it's like, oh, it's not affecting you, but he does take taxpayer money, and I think he needs to be more transparent on what's going on with the finances of code. And because I don't know. He's like, oh, we need this money for future uses. We're not complete with these permits. We're still going to pay these people to do this. But I'm not so sure that you're not overcharging and you're never reaching to the point where you're zeroed out, where you should be zeroed out or close to zeroed out. I don't know where that money is coming and going. I'm extremely uncomfortable in approving this purchase because of the $15,000, which really in the time value of money doesn't mean squat to me. When we're adding 2 more cars, they're going to be a year old and they're depreciated by next year when they should be purchased. And really, when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter whether we get that 15 grand or not. If you look at it right now. So I have to say no to that. And personally, at this point, I can't faithfully approve this stuff anymore because I don't have the information for me to make a good, educated decision about what is going on with code. So I'm struggling with this, and so
Just vote no.
I am going to vote no. And
Well, the thing, you can tell how many extra cars, too many cars Walt has, anytime during the day. Just drive out to the cog building and drive around back and count how many code cars are in the parking lot. You'll always come up with about 12 to 15 cars in that parking lot all day long. And everybody has to have their own, but I'll tell you what, go out there anytime and count cars in the parking lot while they're supposed to be working, and there's at least 10 to 15 in that parking lot every
but
day.
I will reiterate that it is Walt's job to make sure that he has as much as he can possibly get.
there's just 2.
And it's our job to oversee it, and I'm not so sure that we oversee it properly. And I'm struggling with that, because I get like the other townships, and as soon as somebody says, oh, we need this. All right, thank you.
Yeah, but just a comment on that. The code office at one point, when construction was at low, actually had to lay off inspectors because they didn't have the work and they couldn't afford to keep paying them. Yeah, they do keep a big reserve, I'll say that, but it's not directly taxpayer money, it's fees.
It is,
All
it's
fee
my
generator.
money. It is
Well, it's
taxpayer
fee
money.
generated,
No,
and you
no.
may have to pay a fee for something, but you're not, it's not
every
coming out
taxpayer
of our.
that builds- It's every taxpayer that builds a home.
But
Well,
it's still
yeah,
taxpayer
true.
money, and they are supposed to,
I see what
they're
you're
not
saying,
supposed
but-
to be a for-profit business. And
Well,
my
they're
contention,
not.
well, my contention is that we're looking at a for-profit business. That's my contention,
No, it's-
and that's where I'm struggling
No,
with
it's
my,
not.
no.
It can't be.
What I'm saying is that what it looks
But
like to
anyway,
me.
okay, that's just my point,
Was there-
and
was
you're
there
not,
only 3 things?
you're not,
Was there only
you
3 things?
gotta
I respect
consider,
that.
right.
No, I respect
But
that.
consider this, when you vote on a committee, when you have your vote, what your entire board is gonna feel about it. And your personal interest may be a little different than the aggregate of the board. That's just a little advice from
No,
my many, many
I
years.
appreciate that, but it's also what I feel the public interest is. I think it's the public interest, but I respect you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me interject one point, and that's the executive director's annual review is coming up later this month. If you have any comments to me, I'd like to hear them. and I'll incorporate them in my feedback.
Are you using a written kind of form or social meeting kind of opportunity? What do you see this being?
Oh, it's, they
You
got
use
a,
both.
they got a form for us to fill out. We've seen the evaluations from the managers,
Right.
from the
You
agency
just want an email,
directors,
right?
and the
You just want an
staff. Yeah,
It's-
or just comment, I just, you know, I've got my own thoughts, but I want to make sure that you have input should you like. So we have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.